Our interview today is with a really inspired musician, composer, and guitar player. His music is emotional, contemplative, meditative, and beautiful and creative. As a player, he's very expressive on his instrument, flawless and beautiful performances always. He's gotten great reviews from musicians and composers such as William Ackerman, David Crosby, Peter Frampton, and more. Please help me welcome Vin Downs. Hi, Vin.
Hey Rick, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on and making the time to do this.
Absolutely.
We're thrilled to have you as part of the community of musicians on Degree Music TV.
I'm honored to be one. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I want to talk to you about your music, about your creativity, about the process, your process to writing and stuff like that, but also maybe a little background on how you got into music in the first place. Might be cool. So, tell us what you feel like got you into music in the beginning.
Cool. Yeah. Talking about the creative process, for me, there's two kind of aspects to it. There's sort of the why and the how. And I guess the why is where we all start, right? What gets us into music in the first place. And for me, it's those earliest memories of listening to music. And my earliest memories, I'm very young, I don't know, maybe 4 years old or something, and listening to my mother's records with her. And I have a really strong memory of sitting on the bedroom floor with our collapsible little record player. And there were three records she would play. She'd play John Denver's Greatest Hits and the first Mamas and the Papas record and the first Beatles record. And I can remember, really distinctively being, really young, but listening to that music and feeling it do something to me, emotionally, but physically. And I was really curious, like, why is, the sounds coming out of this little box making me feel like, getting goosebumps or tingly or just some sort of, physical reaction. And, I guess that's where it starts for all of us, right? With music. And that first initial, like, why is this happening to me while I'm listening to these sounds? And that's where it started. And as I got older, I was really curious about music. And even I guess about 10 years old, my first experiences with like rock music with my friends on the block and listening to the first records. I can remember the first two Ozzy Osbourne records, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, and the first Van Halen record, and Led Zeppelin 2, and the Rolling Stones Tattoo You. I mean, there's something about those records, and the guitars like got me really excited, and especially the Ozzy records, like Randy Rhoads' guitar. That was the first, like, I need to play the guitar moment for me. And so it was just continually feeling like, wow, music is doing something to me, emotionally and physically. And I was so inspired by that led me to like, well, I want to play an instrument. I want to see what this is like for myself and create music. And even from the beginning, for me, it wasn't just about learning how to play the instrument. I really wanted to learn how to write music and play that music on a guitar. So it started very young. And
That's so great.
yeah, yeah.
Not a lot of people, when they're at that age, recognize that, like you recognized how it was making you feel and all that.
Yeah.
So
And
the fact that you felt that right there from the beginning that's pretty awesome.
yeah, and I think we all have that experience. Whenever we first come to music, it's that's what it is. It's not knowing why we feel like we do when we listen to music, or if you're an artist, why a painting or a piece of art makes you feel a certain way. You have some sort of real emotional and physical connection to the art, and I think that ties directly into the creative process where we're chasing that feeling all the time. I still think today, as I write a piece of music, I'm trying to connect to those first initial reactions that I had to music as a little kid. And I still thrive on that. It's like a drug. You're always chasing that feeling. And
Yeah.
I think that fuels the creative process for us, but for all of us. But that's where it starts. I think it's that initial reaction to music.
As you were growing up playing guitar, at some point you had like multiple influences that
Mhm.
sort of brought you to the place you're in right now, of like the amount of or the vocabulary that you have that you draw upon to write with. Stylistically, I guess we could talk stylistically, what
Right.
you got into,
Yeah.
and what habits do you have that
Mhm.
make up how you write.
Right, right. Well, I guess we can start with like starting on the instrument. Like when the first time I played the guitar, it was I had a cousin whose boyfriend had a really beautiful Martin guitar, and I was, I don't know, I guess 10, 11 years old, 11 years old, I guess. And he decided to teach me how to play Dust in the Wind by Kansas. And, not the fancy finger picking, but just strumming the C and A minor chords. And I had borrowed my cousin's guitar to just practice that. And I would just do it for hours and hours and hours. And it drove my parents crazy because just two chords over and over and trying to learn the strum pattern. And I was just hooked, and that was the first connection to the instrument. And then, I grew up on heavy metal and rock. The first concert was Ozzy Osbourne. I was supposed to see Randy Rhoads, but he had unfortunately passed right before that concert. But still, I was like, what, 10 years old, I guess, and seeing that, my first live show, and that does something to you where it's just like, oh my God, I want to do that. That is
Yeah.
so cool. But, I spent most of elementary school and high school playing just what I like to listen to, just rock and heavy metal and stuff. And it played in metal bands in high school and loud and fast. And I love that stuff. And it wasn't until I guess later in high school, junior year or whatever, I had joined the jazz band in high school, and I had a remarkable teacher, David Watson, uh, phenomenal teacher and an amazing musician. And when I had him, he had just come off the road with the Police. He was a saxophone player. He had a horn section that did the Synchronicity world tour with the Police. So I
Nice.
had him as a teacher, and here's this guy who's a great educator, but also he just got off the road, doing real stuff, and he had real world experience that he brought into the classroom. So it was really exciting because not only was he teaching us, about jazz and how to play, but I mean, he was doing it. He was a guy he could, he talked the talk and walked the walk. He was out there playing. So
Yeah.
that was really exciting. And once I did that, then my ears kind of opened up, and he took me in. They needed a bass player, and I could play little bass, and he turned me on to some funk stuff, and then pointed me to, knew I was a guitar player, and pointed me to like Wes Montgomery and Grant Green and just a bunch of jazz. And that kind of opened my ears up. And then I started listening to lots of different things. Um, and then later in high school, I discovered Windham Hill Records, and that sort of would be the first spark that would eventually bring me to where I am today. I just something about the fingerstyle acoustic guitar and listening to Will Ackerman and Michael Hedges and David Cullen and Alex DeGrassi. Something in that just rewired my brain when I heard that. So I wanted to start playing, with my fingers and playing acoustic guitar. And I started getting into that pretty heavy at the end of high school. And that led me into, well, what could I do with this? And because of Dave Watson, he inspired me to be a musician, but also to be an educator. So I wanted to go to college and study, and classical guitar just seemed like the perfect fit because I was already playing fingerstyle. Um, so I did that. And then after high school, I studied with a guy, John Sheehan, another fantastic teacher here in New Jersey, who was into roots music. Like, and he turned me on to Mississippi John Hurt and John Fahey and Bert Jantz and, that stuff. And again, like blew my mind. So all of these things eventually, would sort of come out in my own music. And once I found the creative process for myself, I didn't know how to do that. I always wanted to write music. I always tried, I always wrote when I was in heavy metal bands or high school, whatever. I was always writing music, but didn't really understand the process and how to do it well, I guess. But once I got out of school and I studied with John, I realized I had all these different influences because I loved listening to everything. There wasn't anything that I wouldn't give a shot. I just loved to try to listen to anything. And eventually, I think all of those things, we store all that up inside, and that's going to come out in your process and your own writing. So, that's what I try to tap into now. But again, always using those things, but making it coming out, it has got to come out like your voice in your own original voice, right? It has to sound
Of
like
course.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the process comes in. I think that's the tricky part. Yeah.
But besides the process, for you, I think also like playing acoustic guitar or playing nylon string guitar is a little different than playing electric, where you might have things that help you be expressive on the instrument.
Yeah.
Not that you can't be expressive. You can definitely. I mean, look at
Of
Jeff
course.
Beck.
Yeah, of
you
course.
know,
Yeah.
but certain things or just the a drive or just distortion or whatever more sustained
Mhm.
that can help you do certain things that become expressive on the instrument. But for acoustic instruments, I mean, it's just the guitar and the strings,
Mhm.
and what I've heard you do in your performances that really blew me away is like how well you can express something and the emotions of the music into your instrument. Like you have a very strong connection with the instrument as you play.
And it's a physical thing for me. I mean, with the acoustic guitar, I mean, there is, you can feel the vibrations in your body. So that there's that real direct connection that like when I try to play electric guitar, I don't feel the same thing because I don't play electric a lot. But I've been trying over the last couple of years to get back into that. But it's hard for me to feel that connection because with the acoustic instrument, it's against your body and you can really feel the vibration of the strings and you feel like you're actually a part of the instrument. So I really try to tune into that so I can control, all those things of dynamic and tone and phrasing. It makes me feel like I'm actually part of the instrument.
Right.
And for me, like just because I don't play enough electric, I don't get that connection um personally from me. But you're right. I mean, somebody like Jeff Beck is like you listen to it, and it's like an extension of him, right? It's
You can
it's
express anything
amazing.
on the
Right. Yeah, it's
guitar.
just
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with the acoustic instruments, I feel strongly about that. It becomes like an extension of yourself. And
Yeah.
I think it's easier for me to connect that way and to get what I want to say out through the instrument because it just feels like it's passing from me right into the instrument and out, if
Right.
that makes any sense. Yeah.
Well, what sort of things did you work on, when you were practicing to like be a good performer? What kind of things did you work on uh,
Well,
at that time or whatever?
yeah, I spent so many years like, I don't know, just not being good at anything really playing wise because I was in that sort of, I think a lot of guitar players have this cycle where it's like, I want to focus on, I want to be a great rock player. Oh no, I want to play blues better. Oh no, now I want to learn some jazz. Oh, I want to do some finger stuff. And I would kept doing this, endless circle of just, getting sort of good at some things, but never really great at anything. And that was frustrating after like, decades of that. And then once I had to admit to myself, like, okay, well, I'm never going to be a bebop player. I would love to be a bebop player and like be able to play jazz really well. It's just, I don't, there's not enough time. It's just never going to happen. And there's a lot of things I'd love to be good at playing. But eventually I had to say to myself, well, with the time that I have to put into the instrument and into the process and all that, I need to pick one thing and focus on it. What am I best at? And for me, it was always I wanted to write music and I wanted to write music well. And the finger style thing was always really my favorite thing to do. Both classical playing and, like Mississippi John Hurt country blues kind of stuff, John Fahey, to the Windham Hill stuff, all of that stuff I love. So I really decided, okay, I just need to really focus and hone in on that and try to be as good at that as I possibly can. And then I just, I became neurotic about like tone, especially tone and phrasing. And once I started working with Will Ackerman and Tom Eaton, that changed my world. That I felt like they taught me how to listen to music the right way, how to internalize music better, and how to really get whatever's in here, get that out in my own musical voice. And when I recorded my first record with Will and Tom, and I guess I recorded with them in 2013. That week in the studio, I think we had 4 days in the studio. I learned more about music in those 4 days than 4 years in college with some of the greatest professors. It just, it was amazing because I felt like they were able to introduce me to my own musical voice and then teach me to trust that, which is a big thing, and just allow what's in here to come out. And Will would always say there has to be truth in your music. Your music has to be true. And it took me a while to understand what he meant by that. But that's what it is. It's just, being true to yourself and just finding that inner voice and allowing it to come out in your music and not worry about what everybody's going to think about it. Just, write what you want to write, whatever you're feeling and hearing, write that and play it. And that's
Absolutely.
where the expressive playing comes from because, Will, working with Will and, touring with Will, just getting the chance to, because he was an idol of mine growing up, and then being able to record with him and tour with him and play with him, just to watch how subtle he could be on the guitar. And I mean, he could do more with just two chords than anybody I know, with so much emotion in his playing. And I just kind of took all that in and learned so much from that, and just try to apply it to my own playing, and became neurotic about a lot of those things, especially tone and whatever. But it's just allowing yourself to be in that space and to be open and free, and just letting yourself let that emotion out, and just be part of the music, be the music. So that's it. It's been a great discovery, and that's only been recent, the last 10, 12 years maybe, that I feel like, okay, I think I understand this now. Now I really know what I want to focus on, and how to get there.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to also be expressive with something that comes out of you, something that you thought of, versus learning something off a record or whatever.
Yeah.
Although sometimes, I've been obsessed with certain things on records that I would just play them over and over until I got it in my blood, like, injected it in my soul.
Right. Yeah.
And the fun part about that for me, like in the learning process, was to actually record myself playing along with the record and see how close I am to what was there.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's a good habit, I think,
Yeah.
as you're learning stuff.
Yeah. It's a good habit to record yourself and listen all of the time. I tell my students that all the time. Like,
yeah,
how to record yourself and listen to yourself.
you learn so much about your playing that way.
Yeah. I mean, do you believe what you're playing when you listen to it? I mean,
you hear what you need to improve on, that's the cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an invaluable tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I think we should take a break here and listen to some music.
Cool.
I've seen a lot more pieces on your website, and as well as stuff you post on Facebook, that I hope more people can see and connect with you. So we'll list your Facebook page and all your social media and your website, which I love, by the way, because it's one place you go to and very cleanly done, very nicely done, and you could go from there to everything that is about your world, which is
One-stop
awesome.
shopping. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So that's a pretty cool thing. But also, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about actually how you write music, how inspiration hits you. What is your process for writing?
Yeah. I guess the inspiration is, I think the most important thing is listening, right? I spend a lot of time listening. I make sure start my day by listening and my evening by listening, and try to make sure I'm listening to a wide variety of music. And, I really don't listen to a lot of guitar players as much as piano players and vocalists and wind players, because I think that helps me think melodically and think phrasing and things like that. So that's where a lot of the inspiration comes from, just listening. Writing instrumental music, I still think almost as if I'm writing a pop song or something. It has to have, a certain form. So absolutely. And, singers are big for me because of that reason, but also, phrasing and just melody, right? And
Uh,
I get more of that from guitar player, from vocalists than I do from listening to guitar players, and then listening to piano players to get harmonic ideas.
oh yeah.
Yeah, Bill Evans or Keith Jarrett or Brad Mehldau, or so many people out there. But the process for me has changed. I think years ago I just kind of just sat around and waited to be inspired and waited for the muse to come visit, and which meant sitting around not writing stuff for most of the time until oh, I got an idea, and and then the muse would leave and you'd have to wait around. So I guess during COVID, because I teach high school full time. I teach classical guitar in high school full time. So during COVID, I'm home like this, teaching on the computer, to kids that don't have guitars at home, and I'm teaching them how to play guitar when they don't have guitars. So it was a
Mm.
very strange time, but also I had a lot more free time. The days were shorter, and so I got myself. I was trying to find a better routine and create better habits. So once we got out of COVID, I could, even though I'm going to lose a lot of free time when I go back to teaching in person full time, I could, if I can create some really good habits for myself, I could keep the creativity going. And so what I do now, and I've done the last few years, which I think this process has worked for me the best. I go to school early, so I'm there an hour and a half before anybody's there, before any of the kids show up, and I have an hour and a half of just quiet time. So I'll start every single day the same way. I'll, take out, I keep manuscript journals. I have stacks of them, and I just try to fill them. And so I'll go to school, take the guitar out, and everything starts by improvisation, which is kind of take the guitar out, tune up, and just noodle basically, and just improvise. And with the goal of writing something, could be four measures of garbage or it could be an entire piece. It doesn't matter, but I need to write something every day. So I start with improvisation all the time and just look for something, a motif, short little melody, a chord progression, a riff, something. And once I find that little something, then it'll go into the journal, and then the writing starts from there. So once I have that initial idea, a couple measures of a melody or something, then I love the process of putting pencil to paper and writing the little dots and squiggles, and I'll start writing from there. And that's my favorite part of the process. I absolutely love that. So that's where it starts. And as soon as I have something somewhat complete, I have like the outline maybe or a sketch, um, then maybe what I'll do is I'll improvise more with what I have and see where I could stretch and you know add something, take something away, and sort of kind of play with the colors, play with the phrasing, play with the form, until I have something that's that gives me that feeling that we were talking about before, right? That I'm chasing that feeling. Like once I play something, it's like got to do something to me physically, emotionally, something, right? So once I have that, and I'll transfer it from the journal into Sibelius and start the editing process. And I just love that entire process from from nothing, when you just take the guitar out, tune up, and you just start noodling, to now you have something on paper, I have pencil on paper, and now I have it on the computer screen. And that has worked for me really, really well the last year. I've written more in the last 3 years than I've written, I think, in the last 15 years, just because I'm doing it every single day.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if I write 4 measures or 40 measures, just the act of doing it every day is creating that habit. And it feels like it's keeping that sort of connection to the muse open. So once I have it in Sibelius and I'm in the editing process, I mean, then it's a matter of just, sometimes it's taking stuff out, sometimes it's just adding a note, and it could be so subtle. But, when it's done, I know it. There's a very clear feeling that, okay, this is done. And then it's a matter of just, playing it and just now getting into the piece and sort of feeling myself around, feeling my way around that piece and just practicing it basically. And then eventually, the goal is to record it. And
Right.
sort of that's the end of it. And it's kind of like, I guess it's like painting, it's kind of like drawing an outline and then picking your colors and going back and coloring the painting. And, sometimes paintings have many, many layers of paint on them, right? Things get changed and covered over and just waiting to get to that end process. And that's the recording and trying to make that recording the best painting it can be, right? Because that's what's going to last forever. So that's the process sort of from start to finish for me. And now it's become just like habit where it's just every day. I look forward to getting to my desk nice and early because I know that, okay, I'm going to start a new piece today. Or it could be an arrangement. Like the last couple of days I was taking my dear friend Tom Eaton, who I work with all the time, plays everything really well. But one of his albums, it's called Snapshots. It's 25 pieces for piano, and every piece is like a minute long. And they're just wonderful short pieces of music. So I've been transcribing those for guitar the last couple of days, and that's been so much fun. And that's something else I'm trying to do as well, like writing short pieces of music. That's another kick I'm on now. It's kind of like, an author who's great at writing novels is not always very good at, writing short stories. There's an art to the short story. And I think it's the same challenge with music. It's really difficult to come up with something that says something complete in a minute or a minute and a half. It's very hard to write something that gives you, a sense that you've gone on a short journey and it's come to an end. You feel like, okay, I felt like a complete idea, so that's a new kick I'm on. And I'm really enjoying that too.
That's cool. Sometimes
Yeah.
short pieces are very effective too,
Yeah. I love that about them. It just,
Yeah.
you could say so much in, such a short amount of time. And
Yeah.
if you do it really well, the listener doesn't even realize like, wait, that piece was only a minute and 20 seconds long, but it's a
It
challenge.
said it said what it needed to say at that
Exactly.
point, and,
Exactly.
and that's all we need to hear, I
Yeah.
guess,
Yeah.
So, but cool. I love the fact that, most people recognize that the element of play is the most important part of like just
Yeah.
being free to experiment and play in the beginning. And from those things, because you're sort of like playing and not really having any sort of emotional attachment to anything,
Mhm.
that's when the great stuff comes out, just,
Yeah.
and then you hear it and you go, oh, wow, that was it.
Right. Yeah. You surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what was that? Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then
Same for like, if you hear something in your head and over it, like sometimes it's weird because stuff that you hear in your head sort of comes back the next day and the next day and the next
yeah.
day.
Yeah. But I've
And
learned the
that could
hard
turn
way.
into something.
Right. But I've learned the hard way that when you hear those things, you got to get it down.
Definitely
I mean, for
capture
me, I
them.
put it on paper or I'll, nowadays record on our phone. I know Brian Bellard was talking about just recording, on his hikes, he would just sing into his phone
Yeah.
because I've forgotten more than I've written,
Oh,
and
definitely. Yeah.
David Crosby used to tell me, he's like, well, if you don't write it down, it didn't happen
Yeah.
because it's going to be gone. And
Or record it.
it
Yeah.
just didn't happen. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times, you might write something down or record it and go, I don't know what this is, not great. But you might listen to it, 3 weeks later and go, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Because
Yeah.
it hits you different. Right. So
Definitely.
yeah, it's important. Always got to record that stuff. Everything, every little thing. I think it's really, really
Absolutely.
important.
Well, I want to thank you again for sharing the creative process with us and telling us how your experience with that is. It really helps to hear that, and it really helps for us all to share that experience
Absolutely.
together. So, but what are you excited about now? What's new and upcoming? What new projects, new albums, anything you have that you want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, since COVID, I haven't really been playing live anymore. Uh, After COVID, I was touring with Will Ackerman a lot, and he had retired, so we weren't really gigging. So I decided to take this time to really focus on writing and recording as much music as I possibly can. I really sort of like to, leave this planet someday with a nice, package that says, "Hey, I was here, and this is what I created." So I'm really working on writing a lot of music. See, April 26th, I have a record coming out with Jeff Oster and Tom Eaton, two of my dear friends. Jeff Oster is a flugelhorn and trumpet player. Tom Eaton is sort of does everything, piano, synthesizers, programming, looping, bass, engineer, producer, does it all. We have an album of ambient improvisation called Seven Conversations coming out. And the funny story is that that's not my sort of wheelhouse at all. It's the farthest from what I do. But we were on tour a few years ago with Flow, which was a group with Will Ackerman and a few other new age artists. It was sort of like a new age super group. And we were doing gigs. We were playing Carnegie Hall on Friday night, and we had a gig at Echoes Radio on Sunday. And that Saturday was open. And Jeff and Tom tried to convince me to just take a gig at this place where I had a residency during the summer because I can get a gig there. And he said, "Well, let's get a gig there and we'll play some music." And I'm thinking I'm going to do my solo acoustic sets, and they're going to do, a piano set and maybe some flugelhorn stuff. They wanted to do a completely improvised evening of music. And we had never played before as a trio ever. So they said, "Don't worry, we'll just pick a key and we're just going to play all night long." So I said, "Okay." And they said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to play electric guitar. We're going to plug it into a fractal system. You'll be fine." And, we did that, and it was great fun. We literally played, for 2.5 hours, just made the entire evening up, and it was great. So much so that the next day at Echoes Radio, John Diliberto asked us to do it again live on radio. And we just sort of did it again, just made the whole show up. So after that performance, John Diliberto was saying, "You guys have to make a record because we love to play it here on Echoes." And he was after us for a long time. So last year we finally were able to get a record together, and it's called Seven Conversations. And again, Jeff, flugelhorn and trumpet, Tom, keyboard, synth, loop, bass, and I'm playing electric guitar, and the whole record is improvised. It's great fun. Three great friends just having musical conversations together. So excited for that. Something very different. Other than that, I have three separate solo guitar records that I'm working on. One is all short pieces that are sort of inspired by like cinematic music, like almost like soundtracks for imagined scenes, kind of short pieces though. Uh,
Beautiful.
Another record of arrangements of Irish music because I love the music of Ireland, and I've been arranging a bunch of songs. So hopefully that'll be the second record, maybe, and then I have some other stuff. So I have lots of music to complete and record and publish and get out there. So busy, and I'm also always writing music for classical guitar and classical guitar ensembles because that's what I teach in school. So working on a second book of like progressive solos for classical guitar. And I have a few ensemble pieces in the works too. I have some music published through guitarchambermusicpress.com. I'm one of the artists there. So that's where all my classical stuff goes to for classical ensembles. Because again, that's what I do every day in high school, teach classical guitar full time. So busy, just trying
Nice.
to
Yeah.
trying to stay busy and write as much music as humanly possible.
The Seven Conversations album that you talk about sounds incredible. And I heard one track,
Mhm.
I think, on a video you posted on Facebook about it. And it's really incredible. It's really beautiful music.
Yeah, and three friends. It is just like hanging out with three friends, two other friends, and just speaking just without words. It's just,
Yeah.
that's magic when you're just jamming with friends and just making music, especially when
Yeah.
it's improvised because you never know what's going to happen. It's really just listening and reacting, and that's really special, and I really enjoy doing that, and I look to do more of that. Starting to take some of my acoustic concepts and put them onto electric guitar as well, and starting to write a little bit um, for electric guitar, where it's still finger style, but sort of in that ambient sort of reverb kind of space where, you know, you have to react to the effects that you're going through. So that's different too, and that's kind of challenging. But it's also like picking the electric guitar up for the first time for me again, because it's been so long since I've really played electric guitar. So
Yeah.
trying to connect those two worlds and see if my voice that is on, you know, the voice that I think I have pretty clear on acoustic instruments, if I can get that voice to speak through electric instruments, and to the same point where somebody can hear that and go, oh, I know who that is, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the improvisational thing, you know, especially in the sense that you were talking about, like they plugged you into an Axe effects,
Hmm.
you know, sometimes also those sounds for electric guitar trigger certain things in your playing, you know, or
Right. Because I
whatever.
feel like I have to, you know, I have to listen and react to all of that, you know, the reverb and delay and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I can't play what I normally play because it'd be
Yeah.
too busy. So I have to, you know, and I didn't know how to do that at first. And Tom was like, you know, just listen, just don't play so much, just, you know,
Yeah.
less notes, more
Right.
listening. And it's like, oh, okay. But when you're a solo person who just plays guitar by himself, I got to fill up everything, right? But
Yeah.
in this sense, it's like, stop playing, just listen and just play, you know, what's needed. And
You
sometimes
might
it's not a
play one
lot.
note in a bar or something, you know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
minimal things here and there,
Yeah.
depending on the sound.
Right. And then still trying to sound like you
Yeah.
while doing that. That's a challenge. But it's fun. It's new for me. And it's something I want to get, you know, more acquainted with, I think.
Yeah. It's all beautiful stuff. You know, I would love to be a part of something like that, for example, you know.
Come out east.
Yeah. Next time you do a record, let me know.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on to share your creative process with us and to tell us about share your music and tell us about all these projects. I really wish you all the best with all of them. And again, welcome to our community of musicians, and hopefully we could do some stuff together in the future, as well as something we're thinking about doing maybe towards the end of next year as we get more artists on the channel, is to have maybe a festival of some sort or some kind of live event that we can have a bunch of us all together.
That'd be very cool. Well, I'm very honored to talk to you because I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and I've told you that before. And
Thank
this is
you.
just, I mean, I love talking about the creative process, but it's been a pleasure to talk about it with you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the opportunity. It's been
And
very
I'm a
fun.
big fan of yours as well,
Two
of your
fans, two
music.
friends.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's right. All right. Well, take care, and we'll hopefully talk or see you soon.
Thanks, brother.